What's up, everyone? Today we're going deeper into program variables, program periodization, and a whole lot of other jargon that you probably don't understand yet. We are going to demystify it for you. And today we're going to be talking about program splits and exercise selections and variations. Stick around, you don't want to miss this.
Welcome to the show, Tribe. My name's Yanni Baumeister. Next to me is Phil White, the sexy one of the bunch. Across the table is Rad, and behind the mixer is Richie. We are Unity Gym and the Unified Movement System. You can learn a lot about how we turn driven people into superhumans by downloading and reading our blueprints for strength, flexibility, and nutrition. Check them out in the description. Otherwise, go to unitygym.com. This is a big show today. We're starting to peel back the layers and actually leave you guys with some seriously actionable steps that you can use to design your programs. There's a really good buzz in the gym at the moment. It's always a different energy during testing week, and I'm really enjoying seeing all of the testing videos go up and critiquing and giving people feedback from our UMS online coaching tribe. There's been some, it's just a good buzz, I think, during testing week. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I do. I love it. I love seeing people's faces when I shred them about their tempo and cut them down at the knees. No,
it's not at all
really,
where I was predicting this conversation to go.
No, it's good.
No,
It's awesome.
Really
no, I do, what I meant. Let me clarify. I like seeing people learn things and have an aha moment. And a lot of people go through that in testing week. A lot of people get real breakthroughs where they go, wow, that's what you're meant to be doing here, or this is how that's meant to be done. And that's a big moment for me because as a coach, I'm always looking to give people those moments. And it's really cool. It's really cool when you see your senior students who you often have less to teach. You know, you're not walking around telling them how to hold their shoulders and where to put their knees on a squat from a day-to-day basis. So when they have that moment where they look at you and go, oh man, that's big, you know, I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And first testing week since the gym's opened up.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, big time. So it's what you're watching.
Progress.
You're watching a lot of egos get crushed because people aren't as strong. They've gone backwards a little bit in lockdown, which can
only
be
in lower body.
expected.
Only in lower body. The guys a lot of people
Yeah.
are telling me that they're actually getting some PBs on upper body.
Yeah.
That they're stronger than they've ever been before. Stav this morning was saying to me that this testing week is the first time ever that his dumbbell external rotation was balanced to his bench. He's never had that before. It's always been imbalanced.
Wow.
So there was a couple of really good moments there.
You know,
with some of the guys.
Another real nice moment I had last night was overhearing. I was fluffing around getting organised to leave when Richie started teaching the evening class. And I heard him complimenting one of the guys who, you know, had tested with a positive test, a good test, a pass with his overhead pressing in comparison to his bench pressing. And Richie was saying, because we do such a nice balance of vertical push-pull and horizontal push-pull, most people are testing with a pass on the vertical push-pull. I remember back in the day when we first did this, all the way back, it would have been like 2008 or something, or 2006 at Tony Battagi's Battagi Fitness Institute. And I remember failing miserably on my overhead press.
I didn't even get one rep.
I didn't get one rep.
I couldn't get one rep.
And it just was like this huge awakening moment for me, realizing how piss weak I was in my vertical pushing in comparison to my bench press.
Balanced back then.
And it's just so nice to see, you know, what the results are, what results are produced by a training program that is so well balanced. You know, that actually focuses on this. And the testing, I guess, for me, the reason why I get so excited during testing week is that it's really important. It's in our core values to get results. Get results is literally one of our 5 core values. And what that means for us is not just, you know, achieve the result or the goal that you set out to achieve. It's about demonstrating success, and it's about demonstrating success is exactly what you do when you do testing week, because when you start to unravel the balance in your body, it's a really nice way, especially when we're getting all these videos posted in the UMS online coaching group, which we're going to be working to critique at a much deeper level on Friday during our weekly group coaching call. But it's a really, really nice thing to see people demonstrating success and really hyped about the fact that, last testing, they didn't do so well in this, and this time around it's come to balance, the balance has come to fruition, It's very exciting. Yeah. As a physio standpoint, it must be nice to see people training in a manner that sort of balances their body, doesn't excessively overdevelop certain parts of the body,
Yeah, and I think there's the beauties in the kind of simplicity around that. I think it's kind of a funny one to think how revolutionary it's been for me kind of getting used to training here and having that one-to-one horizontal and vertical. It's that just makes so much sense from a anatomical point of view. But before, for some reason, that just didn't.
Yeah, we trained for years, probably over a decade as personal trainers and training our clients without giving this same balance that we give it now, and it just makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Well, funny enough, for years and years when I was at Fitness First, I used to train with a bunch of bodybuilders, and we used to pair bench press with chin up. And that was a very common thing to do. It was push-pull, and so, it was perceived to be a good pairing. Yeah. And it wasn't really until I think Ian King slapped us in the face or one of the great strength coaches of old and said, why would you pair a horizontal push with a vertical pull? Yeah. Why not pair vertical push-pull and horizontal push-pull? It makes a lot more sense, with the way the body works, and it certainly produces good results for us.
And the other thing with testing is from physiotherapy background, it's all about objective testing and seeing that your intervention or not intervention is actually making a change. So testing is an integral part of that. So it's good to be, kind of living that in the gym as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. Very, very cool. So today we're beating this drum this week of program periodization, and of this, at the core of what we're talking about this week is that you really shouldn't just be doing the same thing over and over again, which so many people are doing. They feel like they get a good result with a program, and so they think, man, I'm gonna repeat that program again, expecting that same result is going to happen, and it's not the way it works. We spoke about this a lot yesterday. That adaptation is a process where your body adapts to a new stimulus, and so you go through the process of adaptation where you become stronger or more flexible, or you get a result from what it is that you do that is an initial result. And if you continue to do the same things, the rewards, they start to diminish. You get diminishing returns on what you're doing. So the idea is, it's the same with running. You can run for, as somebody that's really new to running, you can run for 1 to 2 kilometers a couple of times a week, and you'll see a massive improvement in fitness. But pretty quickly, that 1 to 2 kilometers a couple of times a week is going to do bugger all to improve your fitness.
Now, there's something I want to say before we go on, and one of them is I just want to give a quick shout out to everyone catching us live on the UMS Movement Mastermind private Facebook group. If you guys are listening to the podcast or watching the replay on YouTube, you've got to get over there, and I want to reward them. So good morning, Quack, and good morning, Andy, for commenting. There's actually 14 people on live, so tell us who you are and where you're on.
Give you a shout out.
But
say hello.
Next thing, and I think this is really important that we just quickly draw this line in the sand before we step over it. If you are a beginner or you're new to exercise and you're catching this podcast or you're watching in the UMS Movement Mastermind group, I do not want to freak you out with what we're talking about this week, because when you're first starting out, and it is a beautiful time to be exercising when you're a newbie, because you get such a big reward for your effort just by turning up and doing a little bit of work. You do not need to weigh yourself down with the complexities of program and periodization. For the first probably 12 weeks of your training, you would improve immensely just by doing push-ups every morning, so just keep it super simple at that stage.
You can actually, even with a really good stretching program, you can actually get stronger.
Yeah.
And with a really good strength training program, you can actually get more
flexible. That's
when you're a
exactly
beginner,
right.
when you're that
So,
new,
you know, before we dive into the complexities of program periodization, and we are going to go layer by layer through this and how we start to manipulate things at Unity Gym. And there are many ways to skin a cat. So we're not the be all and end all. This isn't the only way to design programs. But for the new people who are just starting to exercise, or maybe have just kicked off or commenced an exercise routine after a couple of years of hiatus, you just focus on the simplicity of it and get a really nice little workout. Done. Don't worry about
focusing on the, like what you're talking about there, Rad, with diminishing returns is just such a key thing to understand this whole sort of piece. Because as Yanni, I'm so glad you pointed that out. Like, please, don't get freaked out by this complexity. Like, get stuck into it if you're new to this or even had a break. But then, diminishing returns is such an interesting thing, and it's why it's really hard to become an Olympic athlete and a world record holder. Like, you can get a part of the way there by just doing the simple stuff, but then it really takes like so much to then get those little percentage gains to actually become the best in the world at anything. And that's why
thousands of hours.
That's why they
training.
Have staff that manage every little part of their life to sleep and nutrition, and are really looking at how they tweak their programs to the point of getting so detailed around muscle contraction types and energy systems and all that. So that's the idea of this diminishing return stuff. At the beginning, you're just going to get so much out of getting stuck into it.
But the people that we're really talking to here is, again, if you're a beginner, take this with a grain of salt and enjoy your workouts, and soon enough you will come to this point. But we're talking to the people who are saying, either the people that are saying, man, I got such a good result with this program or these last couple of programs, I'm going to repeat it again. You're not going to get the same result. It's not going to happen the same way. Or the people that are saying, oh my God, I'm so frustrated. When I started training, I got massive gains in my flexibility and strength for that first 6 to 12 months. And in the last 12 months, I just haven't been able to get any better. Yep. So those are the people that we're talking to here. Yeah,
some of the best strength coaches in the world used to say, you get a 30% increase or adaptation or improvement in strength through consistency. If you're new to strength training, it doesn't really matter the program. You just have to be consistent and you have to do things properly. And
just a scientific point on why that is generally happening. We've talked a bit about it before with the neural adaptations to training. So much of with being able to generate strength in your muscles is being able to basically access there's so many muscle fibers, motor units that you can't access unless you have extreme neural drive, and that's why you get mothers lifting cars off babies where they are suddenly able to access all this like superhuman strength. But just as part of training, we start to be able to access larger and larger motor units, which makes you stronger without actually having any physical adaptation to the muscles themselves. So that's how just turning up and just doing the training will mean that your nervous system starts to really get firing and you get great gains.
Yeah.
But then eventually, and it happens in the grand scheme of things, this happens pretty quickly. Eventually, you're going to go through that adaptation, and turning up and doing the work is not going to produce even close to the results that you got when you first started. And at that point, you need to start doing something called periodization.
Yep.
And this is
usually, for most people starting, it's usually around the 9 to 12 week mark that this occurs if you've been consistently lifting weights or training or doing stretching, that you'll find that you start to really plateau.
Yep. And we're talking like you'll start to plateau at that 9 to 12 week mark. I don't know exactly when after that, but very shortly after that, you will hit a grinding halt. You will get to a point where you literally can barely get stronger by doing the same thing
again
anymore.
Just make it really clear, the reason for that is it's generally that kind of within that first 6 weeks, it's when you're really just ramping up your kind of neural drive systems, and then you start to get limited by basically the speed in which you can build hypertrophy in the muscles and build muscle size, tendon adaptation to load, like all of these things. That takes that takes time.
Yep. Yep. So what we're talking about today, there's several variables that we manipulate for periodization. You have exercise selection. You have the amount of weight you lift, which directly correlates to the amount of reps that you do. You have the rest between sets. You have the tempo at which you lift the weight at, and then you have overload techniques. What we're going to talk about today is what we've identified as probably the most basic things that we manipulate in the UMS for periodization. One of the first ones is the exercise split, and the exercise split is not something that we manipulate too much. It's something that we've set by looking at what the good research says is the most effective way to develop strength and not to overload yourself and to achieve a consistent progress. And that is that you really need to rest about 48 to 72 hours on the same muscle group if you take it to failure and really do a good workout on it before you can produce maximal effort again.
And do you know what one of the things that you can do lifestyle related to speed up that process that actually has a really good science?
Are you asking me, or is it rhetorical for the
rhetorical.
listener?
Drink coffee. Coffee has I read a really good study on coffee recently where it has an anabolic response to recovery after exercise.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Google anabolic if you want to. Let's not get into that right now. But
just thought I'd throw that in there.
There you go.
As we're all
Who
drinking
knew?
our
Coffee
coffee.
has some health benefits.
Yeah.
So the program split is one thing that you want to try to understand. And the way we do it in the UMS is we do bent arm strength on Monday and Thursday, which is upper body strength training movements that involve bending the elbows. Then we do lower body strength training on Tuesday and Fridays. And then for those that are keen, that want to do more than 4 days a week, on Wednesday and even on Saturday, if you want to, we do our athletic skill development, which means that you can either, in the UMS online coaching, we teach people how to do straight arm scapular strength for calisthenics and things like that. But we also coach people on how that they can work on glute activation and hip stabilization and strengthening for athletic performance. So that's in a nutshell what a program split means.
Can I just quickly talk about that rest period and why it is so important? It's not just like this arbitrary sort of time that makes you feel slightly better. It's about getting optimal adaptation to the training stimulus. So if you come back and you train before that, like what happens when you train is basically you're causing protein turnover. So you're doing exercise that's going to stimulate some protein breakdown and then the synthesis of new protein. And if you come in and you start training day after day doing the same thing all the time, that turnover versus regeneration, it starts to get out of whack, and you kind of end up turning over more than you can produce. It's all about having that rest period, like the time between training the same muscle group, is to get an optimal recovery. It's not like you can just turn up and be like, oh, I'll just train harder and I'll get a better result. It's like rest is just such a key part, and mixed with nutrition.
And it's a really confusing thing to get your head around when you're starting out in the gym, because you get this conflicting stimulus, because when you exercise, when you lift weights especially, you get what's referred to as blood gorging in the muscle, which is what we refer to as a pump, and you feel swole. Yeah, especially I know the guys love this. I certainly do. You feel good. And so you feel like going back to the gym the next day and repeating that process and getting swole again, and especially in the muscles that you like to look swole, like your pecs and your delts and your biceps and things like that. And, I used to see this all the time. You see guys coming back to the gym over and over again doing the same muscle groups, and they used to argue till they're blue in the face, but I'm getting bigger, I'm getting swole, and then they go on a 2-week vacation to Bali, and they go, man, I lost so much muscle when I was in Bali. And, here's a fun fact for you. You don't actually lose any muscle when you go on a 2-week hiatus from the gym. It takes a little bit longer to really start to lose muscle. What you lose is the party pump, and so this is a bit of a head battle especially for guys to get around to leave it that 72 hours so that they hit what we refer to as the supercompensation effect, which is the peak of adaptation you want to hit the stimulus again at. You don't want to have dropped off the adaptation curve, and you don't want to hit it on the way up. You want to catch it right on the peak, and that tends to be, depending on how much coffee or anabolics, exogenous hormones you take, it tends to be 72 hours for someone who's doing it naturally. Yeah.
Yep. And so that's, again, this is why we love having Phil on the show here, because we get the real science talk on the things that Yanni and I like to spew out. But that is no, I love it. It's awesome, because I can't explain it the same way Phil can. Whenever he says it, I nod my head and go, yeah, that's what I meant. But so that's a program split, and we've chosen the program split that we do in the UMS for a very good reason. So if you're not enrolled in the UMS, then this is how you want to be thinking about the way that you do your program. You want to be first thinking about a program split.
And for everybody out there, the way that you select your program split is based on your priority.
Yep.
So if your priority is to develop strength in your lower body, then the lower body should take precedence at the start of your training split. And the start of your training split may not be a Monday.
Yep.
It may be a Sunday or a Wednesday.
And it might only be a 3-day week.
That's right. It depends when you've had your rest period. And usually, like we like to have a day off on Sunday and not do anything except sit on the couch or go for a walk or something, Then our training split starts on a Monday, and what comes first on the training split is usually the thing that gets the most priority, because you're the most fresh at that point,
And we do vertical push-pull on Monday for the big reason that the majority of people that want to learn how to do pull-ups that can't do it, we want them to be the freshest when they can do it, and that is the entry-level calisthenics / resistance training movement that most people that can't do really want to do, and that is really critical. We really want people being able to do a pull-up, so we do that first.
So when you start pushing overhead press as well, like it takes a lot of kind of concentration and whatever, because there's just a bit more that can kind of go wrong, I guess.
And we've played around with our program split to get it to where it was. There was a while ago where we had vertical push-pull on Thursdays.
And we used to do deadlifts on Monday, because it's the biggest, hardest, baddest.
And that's what I did. It was Yanni. It was so funny, because it was Yanni that said deadlift has to be on a Monday, and then 6 months later it was Yanni that said deadlifts has to be on a Friday, because he was like, has to be on a Monday, we've got to prioritize it. And then 6 months later he was like, man, I can't do anything for the rest of the week, we're moving deadlifts to Friday. But trial and error, guys, and we found what we believe is the best way to do it. So the next thing we want to talk about now is exercise selection, and this is the first way that you can manipulate periodization. It's the simplest way. It requires the least amount of thought and understanding of all these variables that you can do, because literally, like, just an example would be, you're doing a flat bench press, or you're doing a dumbbell chest press and you go to a barbell chest press, or you're doing a dumbbell shoulder press and you go to a barbell shoulder press.
Can I correct you there? The easiest and most straightforward way to periodize is to just lift more weight on the same movements. So if you're coming to the gym, every workout you should try to increase the load just a little bit.
But wouldn't you call that overload? I wouldn't call that periodization. I'd call that the principle of overload. That's just overload.
I guess
you're overloading every week. That's not periodizing.
Yeah. I would say that that's the first thing that people think about, though. But then after that, it's the selection of exercises.
Yep, that's right.
And what we should probably cover first of all is the complexity concept. Multi-joint compound movements versus isolated single joint movements, because that's the most obvious. Like taking into consideration that the vast majority of you are going to be training in a gym that's filled with a valley and forest full of assisted machines that move in very restricted ways that limit the adaptation of certain parts of the body but maximize the adaptation of others, then the first thing we tend to do is single joint movements, because we sit in a machine and swing the arm, and it might be a leg extension, it might be a lateral raise, it might be a pec deck, it might be an ab crunch machine, whatever it is that you like to do. You tend to gravitate when you're first starting out to single joint movements because they're easier, they isolate muscles more, they help with that party pump.
Yeah, and my first gym experience of going into a giant gym with like headphones on, trying to avoid eye contact, but kind of watching what other people are doing to...
That's exactly right, and you're trying to learn on the fly, and you've got some weird
and that's
looking...
what everybody does, right?
Yeah.
I remember doing the same thing, and because you don't know any better, and all you know is that you decided you want to go to the gym, and you walk in there and you just look what everybody else is doing and go,
and the squat rack's usually governed by the buffhead crew that hang around it, and even the bench press, the free weight bench presses are usually just littered with buffheads that look intimidating. Half of them are probably bikies. You don't know. Yeah. They got tattoos. But so the first thing you do is, and the biggest exercises you might get into your regime are a lat pull down and a leg press if you can get time on it, because there's usually only one or two in the gym. And so let's talk about the difference between the single joint movements and the multi-joint movements, and how they how the body adapts to them, and then throw in a little bit more complexity, which is open chain versus closed chain. So the difference between a lat pull down and a chin up variation.
Yeah, sure. Well, Phil, you want to go with the machines versus
single joint versus compound movements?
I think the kind of the best way to think about it is like with all parts of the body, we want to be using it as like they're really efficient systems. And when you start to bring in these machines that isolate certain parts of it and then support other parts, it means that the body doesn't have to work as a system anymore. It's now just basically like a whole bunch of the different sort of stabilizing and bracing and support mechanisms that the body will naturally do suddenly get taken out of the equation. So you start to then really isolate one particular muscle or a few different muscles, but without then bringing up all the structures that support and brace for it. So I think it just it can be a fine way if you're it can be quite helpful in certain injuries like tendinopathy to really isolate a very controlled load into one area. Or if you have a serious injury in your abdomen and you need to not use the bracing mechanisms of your abdomen to then get the targeted strength of the upper body. But yeah, basically I think that if you can be doing compound movements, then that really trains the whole body and the joints as systems rather than...
Yeah, and a compound movement and an isolated movement, it refers to... Isolated is what Phil just described. Compound means you're using multiple joints and multiple muscle systems in the one exercise, rather than trying to isolate it to
a good example might be a bicep curl versus a lat pull down. The lat pull down is going to hit the biceps. Now, I say that... with all due respect, the elbow extension and flexion is probably the only area that I do promote single joint isolated movements a lot, just because you can develop problems, and I think there's a need for...
Well, not just elbow extension and flexion, but also pronation and supination and wrist flexion. And so we kind of from the elbow down, we do promote...
single joint isolated movements. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you want to really after you get comfortable on the gym floor, and if you've walked up to the free weights and you the first few weeks that you're in your new gym, by all means get comfortable there using the assisted machines, but you do want to progress off them very quickly, because you will what we're talking about plateauing and diminishing returns, that will happen very quickly when you're on assisted machines. And and
it'll just mean that when you try and do any movement that isn't on that machine, all those bracing and support structures that I talked about with, when explaining this stuff, they won't be conditioned for when you then use that muscle. So for an example, if you do lots of sort of pec work on a pec fly machine or whatever, and then you go and you try and throw a ball really far, you'll have this strong pec that causes a lot of anterior glide in the shoulder joint, and because you haven't been training the muscles of the system, you won't have the scapular control, you won't have the rotator cuff control to stop an anterior glide, and you're more likely to get bicep pain, bicep tendon pain at the front from basically a system that hasn't been working together. So and the same thing as if you are doing lots of, even leg press for an example, that's a decent sort of movement, but because you don't have to do a lot of the bracing through your back, you're just leaning against a backboard, and you don't have to do as much bracing around the core. It means that if you then go and try and lift something, then you haven't got that the abdominal bracing kind of down pat. You haven't got the spinal sort of extension down, and when you go to lift, you might have really strong legs, but the rest of the system isn't going to take that load. So that's where. Plus,
the leg press machine seems to be the cause of some of the greatest gym fail videos we've ever seen. So watch out for that.
So the take-home message, and this is really important. What Phil just said there is a really great explanation of the carryover. And you like, here's the thing, guys, when it comes down to it, we don't go to gym to get good at gym. We go to gym to get good at life.
Yep.
We want to get
hope you do
strong.
anyway.
We want to perform better, unless you're a bodybuilder. And a lot of what we're talking about here, if your goal is to stand on stage in your underwear and be a bodybuilder, it's very different.
Yeah.
Because you're not concerned about function. It's about symmetry and bringing up muscles. And then all those assisted machines really play a role in how you train.
But this podcast probably won't play a good role in.
Yeah, that's right. But from a functional standpoint, to be able to go out and actually demonstrate all of that hard work that you're putting in the gym in the real world, those assisted machines can actually detrain the body. It can have a negative effect because it gives you the sense of the false sense of security. You think that you've developed great strength, and on a superficial level you have, but in a functional level you may actually have not.
The 2 times I've torn my hammy has been after doing a hammy leg curl machine. Like every time I've done that, I've torn my hammy straight afterwards, and it's like
absolutely.
It's just such a that might just be a bit of a coincidence, but if you're training a muscle that in running is used for deceleration of knee extension and like terminal extension of and stance phase, like getting really technical here. Like if you train it as just an inner range knee flexor, like that muscle has got a bit stronger, but it hasn't done anything near its role, and it's become really powerful in the wrong way. And
So to sum up, because we do have to bring this in for a landing today, and we're going to continue on this topic. We're going to go deeper tomorrow and start talking about different variables. No, absolutely. But the take home here is, your program split should always be determined by your priority. If you really want to train, like get stronger in legs, then they should come early in the program split. The program split should evolve to usually spread more days. So you might start training 2 or 3 days a week, but over time you can periodize extra days, and that's a great way of avoiding plateau. You should absolutely be giving yourself sort of 42 to 72 hours of 48 to 72 hours of recovery between muscle groups. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on the supercompensation effect, catching the supercompensation curve at its peak.
And what's the first thing you should change in your program?
Exercises. And the way that you can manipulate exercise selection is going from single joint movements that you might be doing, favoring in your gym, the assisted machines, to free weights, to multi-joint movements. And that's a really, really great way of periodizing your exercise selection.
I think that tomorrow we can continue this, because we didn't even touch on open and closed kinetic chain movements.
Yep.
So tomorrow maybe we won't spend so much time pre-framing, and we'll really get into exercise selection. And
just love a good pre-frame,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But for those that are tuning in regularly, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and we'll presume tomorrow that you listen to today's episode, and we'll pick straight up.
And it won't just be for beginners going from single joint to multi-joint movements. Like we'll talk about with the squat and how you can really by changing.
Let's lead in. Let's get more advanced as the week progresses. Big shout out to Rebecca, Andy, Greg, and Lee for tuning in live, guys. Make sure that if you do tune in live, because we see a number there, but we don't see who it is, so leave a comment and we'll give you a shout out.
Yeah, we really love questions as well.
100%. And much love to everyone listening on the podcast. The podcast is growing exponentially. Much love to everyone tuning in and watching the replay on our YouTube channel. If you guys haven't already, get yourself over and join the UMS Movement Mastermind private Facebook group. You will have to agree to abide by the code of conduct, otherwise your application will be rejected. Have a great day, everyone. We will see you again tomorrow morning to go deeper into program periodization for more advanced level people.
Bye-bye.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.